Hey friends, welcome back. In this video, we want to talk on three fun but very important issues. One is the issue of oral genres. Two is Bible versions or translations. And then three, where do we start? So I want us to jump into the issue of oral genres. You may say, Billy, what's an oral genre? Great question. Remember, orality, as we've been talking about, is this way of receiving information, processing it, remembering it, and then passing it on. And oral communicators prefer to rely on the spoken word for communicating. But they do that in different ways, and orality gets expressed in different ways, what we call oral genres. And you know this even if you may not realize it. So, for example, music is an oral genre. And it's a powerful one. I don't know if you are in a context where you take a vehicle of some kind, either your own personal vehicle or you ride public transport to work in the morning or to school. Oftentimes there'll be music playing, or you'll be listening to music. We encounter music at home. We encounter music at church. We encounter music when we're out in the community. Music is an incredibly powerful way of communicating. And oftentimes, if you pay attention, music comes back to story or to narrative. And it may not have a clear beginning, middle, and end, but it's tapping into, or it's inviting us up into a story. And it moves us in ways we don't even realize. You can remember songs in very, very powerful ways. They can move your emotions, capture your heart. It's like, that's the beauty of an oral genre, what we know of as music. Oftentimes, music then gets put to dance, and your body gets involved in choreography or in different movements. Now, I'm not a very good dancer, but in a lot of cultures, dance is a powerful tool for communicating. And oftentimes, dance will be enacted or dramatized stories, maybe stories that are of incredible value or help shape the identity of a community. Now, some of you are thinking, but dance, they're not talking. They're just moving. That's right. So in a technical sense, it's not spoken. It's not oral communication or spoken communication. But because so much, when we're talking, so much communication is done through the body, non-verbally, that we often count dance as an oral genre. Now, there's another one you might think of, proverbs. You say, Billy, what's a proverb? It's just those short, pithy sayings, those short sayings that kind of summarize words of wisdom. So, for example, in Uganda, a lot of times the one we would hear would be, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Well, that's a short story kind of boiled down into just one or two lines. But it's very powerful for trying to communicate what happens when big leaders don't get along and who suffers. So, music, dance, proverbs, drama, and storytelling are other oral genres. And the one we want to focus here is storytelling. And storytelling, every culture has its own storytellers. And sometimes they're applauded and kind of appreciated. Sometimes they're overlooked. But every culture in the world is made up or includes storytellers. So this is an important communication genre we don't want to run past. So, we're going to talk about Bible storytelling, but before we do that, I want to just turn to this issue of Bible translations. You say, Billy, which translation do I use if I'm learning a Bible story? It's a great question. Sometimes it's easily answered. What's the translation you have? Use that one. If you're in an English context, or you're working with English speakers, or you have access to English Bibles, oftentimes you can find several different ones. And the important principle we go back to when we're telling Bible stories is not, is it exactly right according to my translation, but have I captured all of the details? Have I captured all of the details from the scriptures? I can use my own words, I can use my own language, but I don't want to leave out any details. They're not Billy's details. They're not American details. It's God's word. They're God's details. So it's all important. So this is different storytelling groups do it differently. For us, we feel like we want to include all of the details, and then we tell it in our own words. Now, for me, I love the New Living Translation. It's a good place to start. It's a bit more of a paraphrase, but it communicates usually very easily. I also love the English Standard Version. That's a good one, a bit more academically rigorous. So sometimes I'll kind of try and read over those, see what language fits, find out what translation you have available. And another whole topic is oral translations, which is another thing that we could get into at some point. But it's this idea of trying to say, how do we communicate God's word in ways that people can hear? And so I think what your story selection process is, your translation selection process is important. Pray about it. Ask God. The last thing I wanna ask about or mention is story selection. You say, Billy, if I'm learning a story, where do I start? Start with an easy story. Don't bite off don't try and do David and Goliath, all of 1 Samuel 17. Don't try and do Daniel in the lion's den. Those are awesome stories, but they're incredibly long. A lot of details. Start with Mary and Martha. Start with Jesus calming the storm in Mark 4. Or blind Bartimaeus in Mark chapter, I think it's Mark chapter 10. Use one of the Elisha stories. Those are so powerful, but they're nice and short, easy, and they're full of treasure that relate across a lot of cultures and in a lot of different contexts. So I would say for story selection, pick one that is God's using to touch your heart. Pick one that's easily accessible and has some natural on-ramps for your audience. So we're cheering for you. We believe you can do this. We'll see you in the next video.